Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us on France 24 with this special coverage of Donald Trump's state visit to the UK. Now, this is the first time ever a U.S. president has been invited to two state visits to the UK. King Charles III is set to offer a royal welcome any minute to the U.S. president and the First Lady at Windsor Castle. And this despite ongoing protests outside and around the country. Well, France 24's Benedict Pavio is in front of Windsor Castle now. She joins us live from there. Benedict, welcome. Talk us a bit more through what's happening today and tomorrow.
Well, this is the first full day, in fact, of this two-day state visit. And indeed, you are right to underline the unprecedented character of this. This is the second state visit, as I said, unprecedented for a foreign leader to do that. And we know that President Trump is a huge fan of the British monarchy. He absolutely, I think the word is not too strong, so I'll use it, adored Queen Elizabeth II. Indeed, he'll be paying homage, as will Melania, later on this afternoon in St. George's Chapel, to the late Queen. And so we have a full day of ceremonial today here. We know that the Brits do that extremely well. And we're going to have an unprecedented, yes, again that word, guard of honor. There's never been 1,300 soldiers, plus a fly past of the Red Arrows and British and American fighter jets. But the important nature to underline about this first full day is it will be entirely behind those walls of Windsor Castle for security reasons, and that was before the murder of Charlie Kirk, the right-wing activist. So yes, there are some protests that are planned, indeed happened yesterday and will happen again today in the British Parliament, in the British capital, and indeed there were some from the American side, and I think the British side, we have a few ladies raising their voices here, but actually very few people on the streets, it has to be said here, Jeannie. There are almost more media and more police at the moment than there are actual people coming out. But American flags, as you can see behind me, and the Union Jack. Tomorrow will be down to business. It will be a bilateral meeting at Chequers, the country residence of the British Prime Minister. There will also be a meeting with the Minister of Finances, and then there will be, we are told, a press conference where we'll be able to ask some questions.
Benedict, as you're speaking, we're seeing the images of the King, the royal couple, and Queen Camilla coming into Windsor Castle now. What kind of relationship does King Charles III have with Donald Trump?
Well, King Charles has an excellent relationship with the American president. Of course, they've known each other since he was Prince of Wales. So before he acceded to the throne to his late mother, Queen Elizabeth II. We know that President Trump, as I was saying, loves the British royals. And indeed, on the plane on Air Force One coming over here, he was talking about that there will be beautiful pictures. So I can confirm that there will be beautiful pictures. And we know that the White House is very partial to that, as is the US president. And he was calling King Charles last night as he landed here in the UK a good friend. And so I think it'll be very interesting to see how that is reflected throughout the day, and particularly when there is later on today that big royal banquet, and both the King and President Trump will be making speeches. I understand the King's has been redrafted several times. It will be 7 minutes long or thereabouts, but what we don't know and what the British officials don't know at all is what President Trump will say. So will it be off-the-cuff remarks, and if so, what will the nature of that be? But it will be fascinating to see the two men, and we know that President Trump loves seeing, having a photo album of these photos. It means a lot to him. Of course, let's remember he had a Scottish mother, and he has some golf courses in Scotland, so he's very partial also to the relationship for all kinds of reasons with the United Kingdom. But not everybody is a fan. There is controversy, for example, that could be looming over the fact that the United Kingdom is going to be recognizing the state of Palestine soon, along with France and other countries. Also that the British Prime Minister is expected to raise issues of the humanitarian crisis, for example, in Gaza. But today, as I said, is really not about politics. Of course, the head of state, King Charles, doesn't officially do politics. He must remain neutral. But we will see guard of honor, as I said, fly past Also, there will be that special moment where the First Lady and Donald Trump will go to the tomb of Queen Elizabeth II and say some prayers there in recognition of her role and her life. We know that President Trump liked Queen Elizabeth very, very much.
Benedict, thank you. We're going to check back in with you throughout the day as Donald Trump does land there. We see the helicopters, or we saw helicopters as you were speaking, which should be making their way to Windsor Castle at the moment. We'll be checking back in with you a bit later once Donald Trump touches down there, not far from Windsor Castle, for this unprecedented second state visit. And we're going to talk more about this with Quentin Peel. Quentin is a former foreign editor for the Financial Times. He joins me now live from London. Quentin, thanks so much for taking the time to speak to us. Just let's start with some context. U.S. presidents typically receive only one state visit per British monarch. Why is Donald Trump getting two?
Well, I think because they were very keen to use this sort of soft diplomacy to try and get closer to Donald Trump. The excuse is that he is the only president in recent times who has had two not consecutive presidencies in America. So that's the reason that they say, oh, well, he gets two. But the truth is, this is seen all along as one way of getting close to a president with whom the British, it must be said honestly, feel very uncomfortable.
Well, tell us a bit more about that. What kind of feeling is there in the British public to Donald Trump? I mean, I know you can't generalize everyone, but is there a certain feeling more for or against the U.S. president?
Oh, I think that there's no doubt. I think the last opinion poll I saw said that more than 60% of the British disapprove of Donald Trump and only about 25% approve. That said, the actual opposition to his being invited has actually declined a bit. And I think that there's a sort of basic realism to the Brits that they feel, look, we've got to live with this guy, even if we don't like him. And that's certainly reflected, I think, by King Charles and indeed by Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister. But neither of those gentlemen are anything like Donald Trump in terms of character. So I think that they will find this all a bit uncomfortable, even though they're going to put a very brave face on it.
And we did see King Charles already going into Windsor Castle. There behind you as you're speaking, we can see what we assume to be Donald Trump's helicopter touching down, or one of his helicopters about to touch down for the beginning of this state visit. So King Charles III will be beginning the state visit, welcoming Donald Trump with this very lavish celebration. He'll also be meeting with the British Prime Minister, Keir Starmer. How different are the roles of those two men in shaping the outcomes of this visit?
Oh, very different in that the king will not be political. I mean, let's be clear. King Charles is passionate about certain things in world politics and the state of the world, one of which is action against climate change. On that, he's in a very different position to the US president. So on that point of view, will he actually say anything at the banquet tonight to underline the fact that he still believes we need to take more action on climate change? Keir Starmer, on the other hand, is desperately keen to get the Americans on side on Ukraine, where he's worried that Donald Trump is much too inclined to be nice to Putin and to believe that the Russian president means what he says when he says, oh, he'd really like to have a ceasefire and make peace in Ukraine. So the Brits are very skeptical about that, and they're determined to keep Trump on side. So that's a much more difficult relationship. And the other part of that difficult relationship for the government and the Prime Minister is, of course, Donald Trump's determination to raise tariffs on imports to the US. And on that, the Brits have not been as successful as they wanted. They were hoping that from this visit, they would get an agreement to reduce tariffs on British steel exports to zero. They have failed.
The U.S. and the U.K. have long had what's always been described as a special relationship. Do you think that special relationship still exists in the day of Donald Trump?
I think it was always exaggerated. Let's be clear. The person who invented that phrase, I believe, was Winston Churchill. He was desperate in the Second World War to actually get the US on side and to come into the war. So he was really keen to underline this special relationship. And indeed, it's been part of the British belief ever since that we are close to the Americans. Actually, that's not entirely true. There's always been a significant degree of mistrust between the two countries, not least because the Americans were always very mistrustful of the British Empire. And they put a lot of pressure on the Brits after the Second World War to give independence to their colonies. And the British were not terribly pleased with that sort of pressure. Then you get to Suez in 1956, when you had the Americans basically turned their back on Britain and France when they went into Suez to try and control the canal there. And again, that was seen as a great betrayal. So actually, this special relationship has never been quite what it's talked up to be. But there's one interesting recent development on that. There was an opinion poll just now, I think a week ago, suggesting that the British people are much more sceptical about the special relationship than British politicians. So only about 30% of British people think there is a special relationship, but something like 70% of politicians want to believe that. This visit is all about what people want to believe rather than perhaps the real reality.
Speaking about what people want to believe, well, what's the British Prime Minister himself hoping to get out of this state visit, particularly domestically?
Well, he's not in a very good position at the moment. He's had two mega scandals in the last couple of weeks. One, his deputy, Angela Rayner, was forced to resign because of a scandal about not having paid the full taxes on buying a flat for herself in Brighton. And then the biggest scandal and the most sensitive is that Keir Starmer has actually been forced to sack his ambassador to the US, Lord Peter Mandelson, all because of the scandal of how close Peter Mandelson was to Jeffrey Epstein, the serial sexual predator who died, it's believed, by suicide when he'd been jailed for his activities. And Peter Mandelson has been shown to be much closer to Jeffrey Epstein, perhaps, than people realized, and defending him. Now, the complication of that is that Donald Trump himself was a great friend of Jeffrey Epstein, although he denies that this continued for anything like as long. So the fact that you've got this scandal in the background there for Keir Starmer, which is a scandal that actually involves the US president potentially, is makes it really quite difficult. And as a result, Keir Starmer is not looking in a strong position domestically at all. His popularity ratings are significantly lower than those of the US president at home. And neither of them is particularly in the positive ratings at the moment. So Keir Starmer would hope that the welcome here giving to Donald Trump will show that he is a global statesman and that this will steady his popularity ratings. I'm not sure that that's going to be a huge success, precisely because the Brits don't like Donald Trump. So it may slightly work against him.
Indeed, and it's interesting you mention Jeffrey Epstein, because that seems to be something that the protesters are certainly trying to pinpoint with those incredible images of Trump alongside Jeffrey Epstein projected on the side of Windsor Castle, where Trump's about to be welcomed last night.
Yes, absolutely. Four people have apparently been arrested for their part in putting these up. I've seen more pictures of a van that's been going round Windsor with a big screen on the side, again, showing pictures of Donald Trump with Jeffrey Epstein. So that relationship is certainly It's going to be something that the demonstrators will like to emphasize. I think the nervousness of the British government and of Keir Starmer is what will happen when the two of them are supposed to be having a press conference tomorrow when Donald Trump goes to stay with the Prime Minister at his residence at Chequers. And the British press and the international press undoubtedly may try to pursue Donald Trump precisely on that relationship.
Quentin, earlier you were talking about some of the big issues that will be on the table for the talks with the British Prime Minister. Ukraine, obviously, tariffs. What other key issues might be talked about between the two men?
Well, I think undoubtedly, yes, Ukraine and Gaza. Gaza is a huge issue, particularly within the Labour Party, which is the party of Keir Starmer. There is enormous unhappiness, distress, anger even at the Israeli onslaught at the moment on Gaza City, and the fact that Donald Trump has done very little that one can see to make any effort to restrain the Israelis. He did express his displeasure at their attack on Hamas leaders in Qatar, but nothing about this attack on Gaza. And that is a matter of huge distress within Britain, not just in the Labour Party, but across the ranks. And I think that's what's going to bring people onto the streets of London and other cities today in protesting about the Trump visit. They actually expect the US president to do much more. He keeps saying that he's a man who wants to promote peace, but actually his track record so far in promoting peace is miserable.
Indeed. Quentin, thank you so much for taking the time to speak to us there. That's Quentin Peel, the former foreign editor at the Financial Times, who is speaking to me live from London. And there you can see on your screens Marine One, which is the helicopter that is carrying the U.S. President Donald Trump, about to be greeted there, as you can see, coming down those helicopter steps to be greeted, I believe, if I can see from behind, Prince William and Princess Catherine, I believe, saying hello to them as he's going to be moving on then to speak to King Charles III and Queen Camilla. Our Benedict Pavio is at Windsor Castle, not far from where that helicopter touched down. Benedict, tell us a bit more about everything that's going to be happening today.
Yes, so this is a ceremonial welcome that is actually about to begin, and this first full day of this second unprecedented state visit of the American president. So the president and the first lady are about to step out of Marine One into the grounds of the castle, and it's important to underline that there will be absolutely no facing events. This will all be held for security reasons within of Windsor. It will be the first greet. That is the hierarchy here. First, the president, King Charles III, and his wife Camilla, and then all the guard of honor, the military parade will all kick off. We know that Donald Trump is a huge lover of foreign, French, but also British ceremonial. He absolutely adores, he says it himself repeatedly, the British royal family. He was a huge admirer of Queen Elizabeth II, and he's a very big admirer, and indeed he called King Charles last night his good friend, and he said also that there would be some beautiful pictures. So the beautiful pictures are about we are beaming them now, and of course let's remember that Prince William is the heir to the throne, and his wife, so they will become king and queen. So that is the future, accompanying the current leader of the United States and his wife Melania as they meet King Charles III and Queen Camilla. So now we are getting into that as the Majesty formally president of the United States for this second. And then we will have a carriage procession through the Windsor estate towards the castle proper.
Benedict, your sound. Benedict, I'm just going to jump in. Benedict Pavia, I'm just going to jump in. Your sound is cutting out a little bit. I'm just going to go back to Quentin Peel, with whom I was speaking earlier. Quentin, the former foreign editor for the Financial Times. Quentin, what more do we know about what kind of relationship Donald Trump has with King Charles's son, Prince William?
Well, certainly the official line is it's been very good. They've met before. They've had quite long conversations. Um, and so I think both sides are going to make a very good effort to show that it is a good relationship. But as I said earlier, it's not a very comfortable relationship. I mean, they
I
are
bet.
terribly different characters. The Prince William, like his father, has been brought up to be absolutely diplomatic, polite, and correct all the time, never to offend, never to give offense. Donald Trump, as we know, is somebody who revels in giving offense and but being rather rude to people. So it is actually an extraordinary combination of different characters.
And Quentin, as you're speaking on our screens, we can see an incredible carriage that's just pulled up. I'm assuming a carriage that's going to be carrying the U.S. President Donald Trump. Talk us through some of the other elaborate pageantry we're going to be seeing on this day that's really more about the royals and Donald Trump. There's going to be an incredible banquet as well today.
Yes, they have really laid it on to make the ceremony almost really as never before. I think there are more soldiers involved than ever before, and all that. Look at all that amazing carriages, the horses. One thing they had to be rather careful about was to make sure that Donald Trump's helicopter didn't land too close to where all the horses were for fear of frightening them, and so they had to be very careful to coordinate this. But he's got the full works here, even though, as Benedict was saying earlier, this is not going to be seen by ordinary members of the public. The closest Donald Trump is going to get to any ordinary British people is probably the waiters at the banquet tonight. And they're the only ordinary people he's going to be exposed to. That is said to be because of fear about security, but I think it's also fear about people saying things that he wouldn't like to hear.
Indeed. Is there any chance at this kind of incredible banquet that there might be people who can get in? I mean, what kind of security is put in place to make sure that this trip runs as smoothly as possible?
Oh, I don't think it's huge security. And Windsor Castle, of course, is pretty used to having a total security. So I would be amazed if they allowed anything through. I think that both the numbers of US security people who've flown in advance of this visit, complemented by the number of British security people, at least if sheer numbers of security count, then nobody will get through, not even a mouse.
All right. Thanks for that. Again, Quentin Peel speaking to me there from London. Thank you so much. And there you can see the carriage moving away. The time for us to turn to our business update with a look at the economic aspects of what Donald Trump's visit to the UK might bring. I'm joined on the set by France 24's Charles Pellegrin. Charles.
Hi, Jeannie. Yeah, one of the major reasons for the fact that Trump is getting this second state visit to the UK, the first U.S. president in history to get such an honor, is because the U.S. is the UK's single largest economic partner, accounting for about 18% of total British trade. And the Starmer government is betting on that relationship to get its own economy going again. A trade agreement was found back in May, lowering U.S. tariffs to 10% on most goods, but certain sectors are still awaiting a final agreement, notably pharmaceuticals, steel, aluminium. And Donald Trump himself said before he left Washington that his counterpart in London wanted to pursue those talks during the visit. But on the topic of steel specifically, the reporting this Wednesday suggests that the Starmer government is entirely shelving those talks to eliminate steel tariffs entirely, instead accepting commitments from the U.S. that those duties will stay at 25%, considerably lower than other countries, something that's made local steel producers like Tata Steel unhappy.
It seems like the emphasis does seem to be on getting more commitments from U.S. tech firms during this visit.
Absolutely. The country might be all about the pageantry and the old carts and horses, but instead joining Trump on his visit are also Jensen Huang, CEO of NVIDIA, the company that designs the chips used in artificial intelligence, and Sam Altman, the boss of OpenAI, the company behind AI chatbot ChatGPT. And the UK's Department for Science, Innovation and Technology announced Tuesday that US tech giants will be dedicating more than £31 billion, or over $42 billion, to AI systems, quantum computing initiatives, and other tech projects in the country. Among the litany of pledges announced in the run-up to the the visit. OpenAI launching its data center building initiative. Stargate in the UK. Microsoft also saying it'll spend $30 billion in the UK over the next 4 years. This is a record for the company and will be used to shore up the country's AI infrastructure and build a supercomputer. And NVIDIA is promising its technology will be part of an 11 billion pound investment in data centers there as well. The idea here for the Starmer government is to boost the country's ability to power AI innovation by building up the infrastructure around it, and notably data centers.
And ultimately, I imagine, to generate more economic growth.
Exactly. And all the advantages that come with that, notably job creation, especially high skills jobs. Speaking to the BBC, actually, Microsoft boss Satya Nadella estimated that AI could boost the UK economy by 10% over the next 5 years. The AI craze has been really a large part responsible for the continued strength of the US stock markets and for sustaining economic activity in the US. So the hope is that it'll do the same across the pond, especially because economic activity there has been stagnant, even flatlining in the latest official figures, which came in July and only increasing by 0.2% in the 3 months to July. So that downbeat statistic is putting a lot of pressure on the Labour government, which promised to kickstart the country's economy. But this bet on working with the U.S. tech sector is raising questions at home about over-reliance on foreign technology and how the local power grid will adapt to such huge energy demands. AI is extremely needy in energy needs, and who exactly will foot that power bill.
And it seems the UK is an attractive destination for AI investments, but are there any investments going the other way from the UK into the US?
Yeah, there is some news on that there. British pharmaceutical giant GlaxoSmithKline, GSK, said this Wednesday it would invest $30 billion in US research and development and supply chain infrastructure over 5 years. And this will include funds to build a new factory in Pennsylvania, with construction slated to start in 2026. The U.S. represented more than half of the company's revenue last year. GSK is one of many pharma groups that have opted to scale up their U.S. businesses recently, as Donald Trump's been threatening to impose tariffs on the industry in a bid to increase domestic manufacturing. And all this pageantry you're seeing right now, all this show for Donald Trump, is a way to try and get him to not act on that threat as well.
Indeed, Charles, thanks so much for that. Charles Pellegrin, our business editor there, telling us about the economic impact of this unprecedented state visit of U.S. President Donald Trump to the U.K. You're watching France 24. Do stay with us. We're going to take a quick break. We'll be back on the other side with more from London. Don't go away.